Welcome to episode 79.
The Wheel of the Year.
Discussing today, Imbolc. So join us as we explore the Proto-Gaelic beginnings of this holiday.
Discussing how we wonder what will be coming in the future as the quickening of the plants are moving slightly, but we can't see the buds bursting forth yet, but we know that they're there.
Yeah, and all of the Roman Catholic syncretization of Gaelic and Christian traditions.
Also, a fun reminder to head over to Patreon, where we'll be discussing and engaging in our first meetup in March.
Stay tuned. Welcome to the Witchy Wit podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm KImberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
Ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in every body and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
Races,
and backgrounds.
with a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true. Our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves.
Welcome to episode 79.
Wheel of the Year.
And today, from the wheel, we are going to be discussing Imbolc, because it's coming up. But before we dive into all of the mysteries of Imbolc, let's talk about some of the mysteries that we are living through in real
The
life.
mystery of daily life.
Yes. Why don't I start?
That sounds great.
Okay. So I just want to talk about walking. We'll be talking about walking a lot because of the Camino, but I've always loved to walk. It's basically my go-to exercise. I love to ski, I love to bicycle, etc. But I walk every day. I have a dog and a big dog. So in the past, we used to walk a whole lot. Now he's getting older. So we walk maybe only 2/3 of a mile together. And it's very slow. I call it a mosey with snow. And then I bring him home, and then I try to get in a couple more miles on my own. But the reason I love it is that it's great exercise, but it's also allowing me to tap into my brain and tap into my spirit. So by that I mean I can think, I can parse stuff out, I can invent story titles and stuff like that. But also there's some times where I'm just, or I'll listen to books. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So I'll sometimes do that or listen to podcasts. And sometimes I just love walking, just hearing the birds and sometimes cars or whatever. And I just think I think it's a healing time for me. And lately I've been listening to a lot of kind of meditation music. And so it's become a part of my morning practice, I think. One thing I do all the time is when a car is coming towards me, I always wave, and they don't know it. Most people wave back. I don't. I think maybe the few times people have, and they probably didn't see me or whatever. But most people, it's kind of instinctive. They wave back, but I consider it blessing the cars. So yeah, it's just one way of, just blessing the neighborhood as I walk and blessing people as we pass. And of course, obviously, when you pass people, you say good morning and, pretty hot out here or pretty cold out here,
Whatever, the weather.
Exactly. You can't go wrong with the weather. So, but it's become an integral part of my morning over the years. And only recently, though, have I started to think of it as not walking the dog and then coming in and starting to meditate, but letting that start my morning practice and start getting me into the mindset of having a really magical day.
I'm so moved.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, what's going on with you?
Well, this is so fun because I just love the way that our lives sync up sometimes. So it's similar, but a little bit different.
Because we're two different women with two different perspectives.
But I've also been prepping for the Camino.
I know. Can I just say really quick?
Yeah.
So one of the things that Leilani did when she came in this morning was carrying a huge box. I mean,
I'm just going to shake it so they can hear.
Of all of the things that she's been gathering since last summer.
Since the summer, yeah.
In various resale shops and thrift stores and things. And she has a beautiful backpack. And I mean, I'm feeling like really behind. That I don't have my box of stuff, but now I'm inspired now that I've seen some of the things that you have. Anyway, I'm sorry.
I'm so glad. No, you're fine. Thank you. So I've been prepping for the Camino and I've been walking. I've also been doing the shopping, but I've been walking and running in prep. And just so our listeners know, I hate running. I am not a runner. One of my legs is longer than the other. Like running is just never been something I've really enjoyed. And it's been fun to tackle it as prep for this. Not that I plan on running the Camino, but
thank God.
Right, but I'm overtraining in smaller amounts so that walking long distances is my cardio is prepped. So that's like a
that makes sense.
A layman's version of like what I'm doing. But while I'm running on the treadmill, I can't write things on my phone because I'm running.
I'm so glad to hear that you've made that choice.
So I use my digital assistant, Siri, and I tell her things. But it's just been really fun because as I tell her to do things, I tell her to make notes so that when I'm done, I can go through my list of things because I have great ideas while I'm running. And so I'm running, and I asked Siri to remind me to fix my chacos.
Oh yeah,
which is like my sandals because I want to make sure they're sized really nicely for the Camino. They're a little tight on my toes. And then like that evening I went home and I was looking at it and like it popped up as a reminder and it's like fix your tacos. And I was like, fix my tacos. Are we having tacos for dinner? No, we're not having tacos.
Oh my gosh.
It took me days to figure out that she heard fix my tacos instead of fix my chacos.
Yeah.
And then another one, I was running on the treadmill and an idea came up about our retreat that we're having next month. And it was that I wanted to ask someone in our group about shamanic trance.
Okay.
So see what Siri heard me say was Charman trans.
Well, so yeah.
And I love that she's inclusive. I'm like, great. I like whoever Charman is, like, that's awesome. But again, hours later, I'm like, Charman trans. So it's gotten to be this game that I play where I like try to decipher. But like anytime I use regular words, it's fine. But it's normally whenever I talk about witchy things like shamanic trance that she gets really confused.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. It's like the old, secretary, like, the bimbo secretary jokes about how they mess up messages or phone messages and stuff. Wow. Yeah. Siri. Well,
yeah.
We need to get a Siri who is more open to different, to alternative spirituality.
Yes. Yeah.
And in that way, her ears are more open to hearing what you said as opposed to trying to make it fit something else.
Yeah. I appreciate that she hears enough about trans that she's picking that up. Tacos, I get. People probably aren't talking about their chacos, But she's a digital assistant, so I'm just grateful to have a digital assistant.
Yes,
so.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Siri.
Thank you.
One of the things I try to get when I talk with her, and she'll say, done, and I try to get real fast, thank you, because every once in a while, if you say it fast enough, she'll say, you're welcome, but I'm normally not fast enough.
I just try to befriend her, because when they take over, maybe
she'll be in your corner.
She'll remember that I treated her with respect, even though she's a AI robot
who will outlive us, and
yes.
Put it, and what they're going to do is they're going to wrap us up in tissue paper, put tubes in us so that we're fed, and send us really good dreams so they're super, super happy. And
have you watched The Matrix?
Yeah. And I'd forgotten about it. But but that whole idea where, and I remember reading a science fiction novelette or a short story where they said, all we want to do is love you. But their idea of love is, making sure that nothing ever happens, that we don't get a scratch, et cetera, et cetera. So, bless their hearts.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, not that we, in case you're listening, not that I really want scratches, so don't add that, but just be aware. Okay.
I don't know how to bridge that into Imbolc, but well, just like they would not want us to get scratches, so too we scratch the surface of the earth as we burst forth in life. As I'm really reaching here.
We
reach, just like the sprouts
reaching for the
sun through the dense earth. This is
a really
probably our worst transition ever. But thanks for being with us, listeners. Let's talk about Imbolc.
Let's just go there.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, Imbolc. So this is a part of our Wheel of the Year series. We've actually talked about Yule several times, and obviously it's Samhain as well. And I think once we talked about Beltane, but I think maybe about 3 or 4 months ago we mentioned the fact that we haven't really discussed, the Wheel of the Year, and we did an overview then. But I'd like to kind of, fill in some of the Sabbats that aren't talked about a lot, because everyone's talking about Beltane and Samhain, right? Mm-hmm. So Imbolc. Imbolc is timely because it's coming up. And would you like to talk a little bit about some of that?
Yeah, and as our listeners know, if you've listened to the Wheel of the Year episodes or some of our other episodes about holidays and sacraments around the Wheel of the Year, I'm more Wheel of the Year focused, so I'm more seasonal, and other people may not be. So I tend to approach this from the perspective of the Wheel of the Year itself and the way that it interacts with the seasons. That's how I focus my worship and the way I monitor time, but just letting people know that may not be the way that other people approach it.
Yes.
So if you want more information on the Wheel of the Year, you can go back to our Wheel of the Year episode. But a brief summary is if we think about time instead of a line, if it was a circle and it's constantly moving through the circle, winter, spring, summer, fall, winter, spring, summer, fall, winter, spring, summer, fall, in this beautiful continuous cycle.
Yeah.
Then we can put Imbolc or spring, the beginning of spring, in between winter solstice and spring equinox. Mm-hmm. So it's the midpoint between winter solstice and spring equinox, and I think about it as the beginning of spring. Mm-hmm. Other people will call it Imbolc.
Yeah. So yeah, and one of the things about the holidays, like with Imbolc and several others, they're called cross quarters because they're in between solar markers. So the solar markers are the solstices and the equinoxes, or the equinocti, depending on who you talk to. Yes. And so these are feasts that are most of them are agriculturally based, earth based, right? But they're not aligned specifically with a certain point of the sun. They fit in between, halfway between those points. And so there's a number of different ways of celebrating solstices and equinoxes as well. But one of the things that I've noticed is that these practices tend to have a lot of local variation as well, more local variation, because they kind of grow out of different agricultural practices.
And because they're not exactly solar, marked because of solar things. So, for example, like the solstice or the equinox, their dates can kind of vary. Mm-hmm. So depending on, I just did a quick Google search, and depending on where you are or which holiday or which tradition you're marking, it could be anywhere between January 31st to February 2nd is when this is being normally celebrated in that window. Whereas the solstice, you can find the exact second.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It can be marked. So,
There were also, just like you mentioned, that depending on where you were, it could be celebrated in different ways, different feast days and things like that. I did find some references to, in pre-Christian times, there are some tombs that they found that were facing specific directions so that it would be exactly marked on Imbolc, or the beginning of spring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And which people then use as marker, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, which I think is fascinating, and that real sense of groundedness in these cycles. We look at a calendar to figure out when the next whatever is going to be, because our culture has taken us away from that. It's not urban life, but the dominant culture in general has moved away from those types of connection. And so I love hearing about places. I mean, Stonehenge is a solstice, I think, right? Mm-hmm. But I love hearing about these places that are actually constructed to mark something that is so important to these people in terms of, their worship and their thinking about their lives. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So let's talk a little bit about what Imbolc is. One of the terms that we often see here associated with Imbolc is quickening. And so, you've heard like the quicken the dead and all of that kind of stuff, right? And so quickening is just basically the first time you know that there's life, say, when you're a pregnant woman, the first time, before, like not counting the test and the sonograms, et cetera,
right.
but the first time you feel something in the belly. And the term actually Imbolc is a Proto-Gaelic word that translates as in the belly. And it refers to that period in early spring when you can tell that the ewes have caught, like they've bred them and they actually are pregnant, because you can see like changes you don't see changes yet in the belly. I guess you do eventually, but you
can see changes in the body.
You see changes in the body,
letting us know that there were changes in the belly, but we can't see that.
You can't
yet.
see them. Yes, that's right. So like the nipples might get bigger or something like that, and again, it's these teeny little signs of something that is unseen, right? And so that's one of the things that I love about Imbolc is that it's spring. It doesn't feel like spring. Certainly doesn't feel like spring. Right now. But it's the very, it's proto-spring. It's
proto-spring. I love that.
It's that kind of like, we're almost there. It's really begun. You just don't know it's begun.
It's spring is the nightclub and I'm standing outside excited to get in. And I can hear the music playing. But it's muffled as boom, boom, boom. And I'm like standing outside.
But you're out in the dark.
I'm out in the dark and it's cold and I'm ready to get inside and dance.
Yes, exactly. There you go. Now there's an analogy. Maybe we'll do that for an Imbolc ritual in the future.
I love
like the pre-disco anticipation. So a lot of the things about it are new beginnings. This all of the stuff that's unseen. All of the stuff that's incipient, that's coming. So anticipation.
I love that one of the things that you were talking about was that it's that trusting that it's coming. I can see signs that I can't see signs of it directly, but I see signs indirectly that it's coming. And I'm in a space of anticipation and trust, knowing that it's occurring.
Exactly. So for me, I love the progression from Samhain to Yule to Imbolc, because Samhain is the last harvest. So people, you have pretty much everything. What's in is in. That's it. That's going to last you until the next food starts growing, right? So it's kind of the end, but it's also the beginning, looking forward to what's going to come, right? And then Yule, we've talked about this. Yule is that, hunkering around the fire, wondering, will we have enough? Will we have enough? And then when you get to Imbolc, you're getting towards the end. I mean, it's, will it last? Will it last? And, but there's hope, knowing that there's going to be, food coming. If nothing else, you'll have milk, because a lot of early Gaelic cultures used milk as a food. It is a food. You know what I mean? But used it as a part of their diet. And so you knew that at least if nothing else, you had milk. And I guess if you were like really, kind of like very grounded and practical, you knew if push comes to shove, there's little bits of meat coming as well. But but it's not there yet, and there's nothing right now. So it's a lot of trust, like you said, a lot of faith, a lot of hope, and so coming out of that, can I talk a little bit about weather lore? Yeah. So a lot of practices around Imbolc is trying to predict how fruitful the upcoming year will be. Like, when will they be able to get grain in the ground? When will they be able to start the harvest? When will they be able to prep, et cetera, et cetera? And so, and we've inherited a little bit of that. Like, there's predictive things. So the modern version of that is Groundhog Day, where Puxatawny Phil, comes out of his den. Puxatawny Phil is a groundhog. Okay, there we go. That's the name. Okay, but that comes from older practices where people try to find snakes and badgers. So to if they came from their winter dens, and whatever their behavior, like they had to circle or they had to do something like that, or like the way they came out of the den told them something. And that is based on an even older belief about, okay, let me see if I can say her name right. Kayach. This Celtic goddess, Kayach, wants to live her life. And basically her life is kind of like cold and dark, etc. And she just keeps herself warm. She just cares about herself. So if on Imbolc the day is clear, people are like, oh crap, because she's made the weather clear so she can go out and gather more firewood so that she could stay hunkered down for at least another month or so, 6 weeks. Yeah. So if it's clear on Imbolc, that means that you're going to have more winter.
But if it's not clear, then she's stayed inside because she has enough firewood. She has enough. So it's gonna burn up.
Yeah, she's just decided she's going to go with what she has. Yeah. And so winter will end earlier because she's not going out and prolonging it by getting more firewood.
I love that so much. Well, because it's like, if we think about it, why do we I've never asked myself, why am I looking at a groundhog? It is just right. It's what we do. And I love, why do I have a giant tree in my house every December? I thought about that, but most people haven't. But it's, I love that whenever I think about these things and I scratch just a little bit deeper, we can see that I can see what it is. And it's a reach for understanding these old, like, divinatory practices
that we're still kind of connected to, even though we may have bastardized them or don't know the connection. But yeah, we're still practicing some of these traditions.
I love that.
Yeah. So I know we don't talk a whole lot about specific goddesses, but there is one goddess who is totally associated with Imbolc. May I share a little bit about her?
Yes.
And she's called a number of different things. Bride, Bridget, Brigitte, different terms. But again, we have a proto-Gaelic goddess called, let me see if I can do this, Briosacht, whose name eventually became Bridget in various forms. And so she's the goddess. She's this triple goddess, a threefold goddess, maiden, mother, and crone, and has there's so many associations with her. And I'm just going to touch on a couple of them if I might. And the primary one being fire. And she's considered, so her name means fiery arrow or fiery power or pointing towards fiery power. Yeah. That's the prototypical name, and I guess the rest is just a name. Anyway, so that fire is manifested in three different ways, just as she's a triple goddess. So it's manifested as inspiration, and she's known as the patron goddess of poetry, the fire of the hearth, and she's the patroness of healing and fertility, and that's that huge association with Imbolc. And then fire of the forge. And that's a patroness of smithcraft and handiwork. So, and handiwork could be like embroidery or whatever, but she's that's who you invoke when you can't find your needle or your thimble fell under the hearth or something. Ooh, two things there. And because of this association of her being fire, but also shooting fire, this idea, a lot of the invocation of her is as a guide into the light, or a guide into the warmth, or a guide into spring, so that by drawing upon the power of breed, you can then survive. You can then live, and probably live a little larger than you might have otherwise while you're moving into the spring.
Oh, I've never really been really into drawn to working with goddesses, and I just have such meaningful, I feel a meaningful relationship with her because there's a number of women in our circle that have a meaningful connection with her, and because of that, I have been lucky enough to be a part of some really beautiful rituals around her and her fire. One of the women had been to her the flame, has brought back the flame and we've all lit candles from that candle, which had been lit from her flame.
Oh yeah.
So beautiful.
Well, so speaking of her flame, so she was another one of the many goddesses who were Christianized, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But the fact that we can still have this connection. When I say Proto-Celtic, we're talking, 1,000, 2,000 years, before the Common Era. And so having someone with a candle that was lit at her flame at our ritual means that we're connected to something that's at least 4,000 years old in terms of, initial movement. Yeah.
Yeah, it brings tears to my eyes. It's just such a meaningful thing to feel that connection through the ancestors.
Indeed. So and paradoxically, but we hold paradoxically, she's associated with fire, but she's also associated with water. And so another thing that you'll hear about is Bridget's well. She has a sacred well of healing in Kildare. And this is the same site as the flame that you had mentioned. And there's at least...
I was reading about that there's... in Ireland, in that area, there's like 3,000 wells. There's like wells everywhere. But there's at least... There's at least like a handful, like maybe 15-ish. They're dedicated just to her. And then there's like one or two that are really famous. The one in Kildare is super famous. And that's the one where there's the fire and her water, so, like near each other.
And what I find so, like these different, they seem paradoxical to us, but think about it. If you have a forge, your forge only works if you have water nearby, right? So when you're working the metal, you need to be able to plunge it quickly into some cool water and then take it out and then temper it a little bit more and then heat, so these things that we kind of make little artificial oppositions with, are actually intricate. Aren't connected. Are connected through usage and through just spiritual connections. Yeah.
I was wondering if we could talk a little bit more about Christianity coming in. And
sure.
Because as you and I are doing the Camino, and this is something that I think that we're working with every time we work with anything around the Camino, is this idea of something that was happening before and then Christianity coming in and adding this overlay, to put it one way, adding an overlay.
Yeah, no, it's true that one of the reasons that the Roman Catholic Church was so successful in missionizing the world, or at least the Western European and various aspects of other places of the world, was because they could tap into deep-seated emotional connections and then syncretize that with their beliefs. And this is a primary example of that, where there was such a cult of greed that they couldn't eradicate it. They may have tried it, at least initially, and then realized that what would make this work would be to take some of that fervor and use it by associating it with a Roman Catholic saint or a Roman Catholic idea or belief or doctrine. And there was this, it's really loose. I think I can't remember exactly what the association with Bridget as a living saint was, but the tie-in is to someone who helped the Virgin Mary. I can't remember, but it's really, really loose. But then they made a big deal out of it because it was such a big deal in places like Ireland and Scotland. Yeah. And so they just grabbed that fervor, and they're so savvy, so canny in being able to tap into the most vital aspects of her cult and then draw it into their Christian forms. And so in this case, we have a convent in Kildare where 19 nuns, and we'll talk about that number again, 19 nuns maintain the flame. And this, let me see if I have this in. Yeah. So the 19 nuns at Kildare tended the fire, which burned uninterrupted from the establishment of that convent in the 6th century until the Protestant Reformation, when Henry VIII dissolved all of the convents. And then, I think within 80 years, they reestablished the convent and then relit the flame.
It makes me sad that they put out the flame.
But
I can only imagine the anguish that was felt by those people when that flame was extinguished. Also, I can imagine how powerful the people who put it out felt.
Oh yeah.
They knew what they were doing.
They knew what they were doing. They felt, well, it was, so they were Protestants, right? Mm-hmm. And they felt that they recognized the pagan ties. Mm-hmm. And they said that this is way too, because they could have dissolved the convent and left the flame going, mm-hmm. because it had nothing to, it was ostensibly a part of it, but everybody mm-hmm. knew it wasn't, right? Mm-hmm. So, but they put it out because they felt the pagan ties to it, and so much of Roman Catholicism they felt was too pagan-y anyway. Popery, they called it. Not popery like the stuff you smell associated with the Pope. Uh-huh. It was too popish.
Yeah.
Popish. And so they, the idea of having icons and all of that kind of stuff they were against. And so this worship, this devotion to a flame, the Protestants weren't having any of that.
That flame... The flame of of her memory, mm-hmm. and it's like when they put out it's like the flame reminds me to remember, and then when they put out the flame, my memory served to hold that, like her memory kept burning, and then we relit the flame to remind. So in that way, it's unbroken. Mm-hmm. There is I do feel a pain. The fact that it was extinguished, but I feel a greater sense of pride knowing that it was that it was relit. Like you
and
can't,
still,
you can put it out, but you're not really ever going to put it out.
Exactly. We will never lose our way. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so from memory. Okay. Okay. Anyway, but so here's, and this is one of the things where you got to give the Roman Catholic Church credit. They kept something alive that if the Protestants had been the missionaries, would have been they would have tried to eradicate it poorly and probably unsuccessfully, but they would have tried to eradicate it much, much earlier. So one of the things about this is that through this, they maintained the fiery aspect of Breed, and the feast became associated with the Virgin Mary taking Christ to the temple, and somehow Bridget's in there. I'm not quite sure. And so it became the Feast of Candlemas. And so that fiery aspect is maintained in the use of candles during that period.
I remember being little and seeing the candles and stuff for this holiday, around the church, and being really invested in the candles.
Yeah, because even then you were like, oh,
yes, candles, fire.
Yeah. And you mentioned that a woman brought back a candle from her
lit from the flame.
Lit from her flame, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the things, we're going to talk a little bit about different ways of celebrating. Actually, let's talk about it now, and then maybe we can talk about, what that looks like maybe for us. Mm-hmm. And these are some of the things that I thought about, but some of these are just taken from websites about how people practice Imbolc. Because, so let me take a step back. So as we talk about Imbolc, while we have these pagan practices that have gone on in various places and have been maintained in various forms, the reawakening of Imbolc happened about the same time as we've been talking about Mabon and the terms. Excuse me. With the neo-pagan practices and Wiccan and the Golden Dawn and those groups, and so some of these have maybe I don't want to say made up, but kind of constructed practices. But what I love about them is that they're still kind of based on these old practices in whatever guise they might take. So one of them is just decorating like your altar or drawing upon the power or the energy of flowers, of spring flowers. And I didn't realize, and so it can, early flowers, budded twigs. Back in New Jersey, it's not a big thing here because I don't know if they don't grow, but pussy willows. That was a big thing. Like we would always take our teachers. Do you know what pussy willows are?
I don't.
Okay, so pussy willows are branches, and the first bud on it are these soft, gray little tufts. And so they're called pussy willows because it really felt like you're petting a cat.
Aww.
And then they eventually fell off, and then leaves came out of there. But the buds are literally like these soft. I'll send you a picture. And we would take a stick of pussy willows to our teacher, and then she'd eventually have like a whole jar of them up on her desk. And some teachers had a green thumb and some didn't, and those that did, they figured out enough water. Like if it's too much water, they would just turn mushy and all that kind of stuff, and eventually the tufts would fall off and her thing would be covered with little things, and we try to get one, and then leaves would come out.
Aww.
Yeah, but sometimes, because they're cut off, right? Yeah. So sometimes some people were successful and some were not. But maybe that's an East Coast thing, because if you've never heard of it.
No.
Maybe they just don't grow. I have to figure out it's a pussy willow, so I'm assuming it's really a willow.
Who knows?
But I'll look at, it never even occurred to me to look it up. I just assumed everyone had it. So I'll look that up and see if that's really a real tree. I mean, it is a real tree, but what's the range of the tree?
I think about in this area when I was a kid, honeysuckles. These highly invasive vines.
Yes, they are.
They would start growing, and that would be one of the first things that I would see down here.
Mm-hmm. And then bulbs. So have you ever forced a bulb? I mean, it sounds kind of.
I planted some in my yard at one point in time.
Okay, those are natural. So those are growing naturally. But what you can do is generally they'll come up around, the earliest ones, like the little grape hyacinths and stuff, will come up around February, and then most of them come up later in the spring and in the summer, right? But if you want one earlier, you can. Like in November, put it in your refrigerator. So you're making the winter happen sooner. And then you put it on a jar. Generally what you do is you put it on a jar on some rocks. Not real soil or anything. I guess you can do it in soil too, but it's easier if you do it like that. And then you water it. You let it sit in the cool for, I don't know, a month to 6 weeks. And then you bring it out and then you water it. So you can make it grow. They call it forcing it because you make it grow early. So you can have it sprout like a full-fledged flower whenever you want it. And so people used to give these as Christmas gifts.
You're tricking it into thinking the seasons have passed.
Yes, exactly.
Whoa!
Yeah. So you can decorate with those. You can, get those to grow a little bit early, or you can just let them grow at their natural pace, which is also, can also be a thing, But so you can decorate with early spring flowers, the flowers that would come out early, and that really is kind of that anticipatory type of thing. Yeah.
Wow, tricking nature.
I know, yeah. Other things that you can do is, just kind of invoking the inspirational aspect of breed is by journaling, by meditating. That's an Imbolc practice in as much as you're kind of calling upon her to assist you in certain parts of your life. But this is the one that I love, and this. I don't know if it's more of a Christian or however, but it's kind of what you remember, where you can, some people just light all the lights in their house, or they light fires in all their hearths and light all the candles that they can. And this is usually done, this is Candlemas, right? So it's usually done around the evening before, like February 1st, that evening, and then Candlemas is the next day.
I love that. I love the energy of that because at a time whenever they were so much trying to conserve and like, will we make it? It's like they could see the finish line and they're like, we can make it. We're almost there. Like bring in the lights. We're going to do it. We're going to make it. It's like that last rally as we push towards the finish line.
Exactly. And it's also trust, right? Because we're burning candles all night long. That means we will not have these candles anymore. So they're again putting, having faith that they will have fire, et cetera, right? Yeah. So that's the one that I tend to do because I have like a shit ton of candles, and it's an easy magical. I mean, like once you get a bunch of candles lit all over your house, I guess you can try to not feel magical, but
right. I know
it's
really hard.
Exactly. I get every single candle out, and it's I just like just walking around the house, seeing the candles. And of course I have to keep walking around the house because some of them are probably, they said, don't leave an a candle burning unattended. So I have to walk around the house.
Another one is Bridget's making Bridget's crosses. And so it's, I guess the way I would describe it is like a cattywampus plus sign. It's like a plus sign that's slightly off center.
And because you take 2 strips. It's usually rowan or maybe willow, and you go around it with straw, and I will put a link to a picture in the show notes so you can see that. But that's another practice because it's considered good luck. I think they give it to girls, to maidens. That is supposed to. Oh no, those are the dolls, the breed dolls.
Okay.
And it's supposed to help them find a husband or something like that.
I was saying I've never gotten one of those.
Well,
I've been gifted a Bridget's cross.
Yes.
One of the women in our circle makes those and gives them out.
I know. So there's a number of different practices. One of the things and then you can also set. So the idea is that breed passes through on Imbolc, and so you can set items of clothing out. And with the thought that she's going to touch them and bless them as she passes, and then you can wrap yourself in that energy throughout the year.
I love that.
I do too.
That's so beautiful.
I do too. So one of the things can I talk a little bit about?
I would love it.
Okay, so I'm I'm marked down as the facilitator for our Imbolc ritual for our circle, and one of the things that has so caught my imagination about this is that, let me take a step back. So one of the things that we did for Samhain, we actually had a ritual that reinforced, because we were, because we could, that reinforced some of the elements of the Camino walk, and that idea of walking to meet the spirits, and getting to the end of where the land meets sea, meets sky, to the end of the world. And so that was our Samhain ritual. And then for our Yule ritual, we were sitting in dark in silence, and women were, it was kind of like nonverbal, wasn't it? And so kind of bringing that along, I am going to... And so, kind of building on that, this is us looking forward and trusting with in my opinion, putting no, like not painting a picture that the world has to fit into, but opening ourselves up to this beauty that I know is in store. And so, my thinking is that, we've done some work, and we don't yet see all of the signs of it because it's in the belly. But with the few signs that we have seen, just wondering what they mean, and just opening ourselves up to the possibility that's going to be much greater than anything that we could have possibly imagined. So that anticipation.
I wonder.
I wonder. Yeah.
That's such a beautiful and sometimes really fun time to wonder.
Yeah. And it can be scary. And I'm embracing the what the hell energy as opposed to, oh my God, what's going to happen? So because I think that might influence, sorry, that's my dog chewing up. Because I think that might influence the outcome, is that openness to what the universe has for us.
What a perfect time of year to practice that. Indeed.
So our poem doesn't have a title, but it from the writings we know that it's dedicated to Bridget, to Breed, and it's a poem by a 2nd century Roman writer called Lucius Apuleius, And if I can just share a little bit about, so Lucius Apuleius, I knew the name. I didn't know this poem at all until I just found it in my searches for Imbolc. But I knew the name because Lucius Apuleius is the author of the only fully saved, fully preserved Roman novel that's extant. So we still have the whole thing, and it's a novel. It's not like most of the stuff that we have from that era are reports or philosophical treatises, but this is a novel, and it's called The Golden Ass. And what I love about it is the magical connection. So, I'm sure there's this huge patriarchal Roman overlay, but so the character, who is also named Lucius, I don't know what that means, but he's turned into a donkey, into a golden donkey, an ass, because he steals a witch's wand. And I guess she curses him so there's that magical connection. And so it's all about him going around as a donkey and doing this, that, and the other, and getting into all sorts of mishaps. But near the end, he is transformed back by Isis. Oh, I should say Lucius Apuleius was from what's the modern day Algeria, so northern Africa. But he was Roman trained. He spoke Roman, Greek. He wrote philosophy. He wrote a bunch of other things, but very, very learned. But he had those connections, and he was transformed back by Isis, which I think is, again,
that.
yeah. And so and he and the character, not the author, but maybe the author too, to thank her. She only asked one thing, that he dedicate himself to her. And
I just ask one thing. You dedicate yourself to worshiping me.
To your life. Yeah.
The rest of your life.
I know. And he's like, just okay, sure.
I mean, I would too. I'd be like, that's fine.
I mean, look, here's your choice. You can be an ass. Well, or you can probably do both, but you can be an ass for the rest of your life, or you can worship Isis for the rest of your life.
I would go with Isis.
I'd go with Isis too. So and he did. So anyway, here's the poem. I am she that is the natural mother of all things,
mistress and governess of all the elements,
the initial progeny of worlds,
chief of the divine powers,
queen of all that are in the other world,
the principal of them that dwell above,
manifested alone and under one form,
of all the gods and goddesses.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for joining us as we talk about this next part of the Wheel of the Year of Imbolc. And again, a friendly reminder to join us on Patreon, where we'll be having our meetup in March.
Yes, indeed. And so as you move forward, thank you for listening. And hopefully you'll be able to tap into some of this Imbolc energy.
I wonder.
We hope you have enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
It would be great if you would help make Witchy Wit possible and get access to exclusive content by donating on Patreon.
We'd love it if you join our Witchy community and enjoy shareable content on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Would you do us a big favor and support us by rating and reviewing us wherever you get your podcasts? It's free and helps witchy folks find us.
Feel free to email us at witchywitpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from our community. Reach out and let us know what's brewing in your cauldron.
New episodes are released every second and fourth Friday. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform so our episodes go right to your playlist. You can listen as you ride your broom.
Stay witchy, y'all!